Hey, what's going on guys? TheStarguy34 back with another video. In today's video we are continuing with the alternative future of the world part 7. If you want to enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe, and let's dive right into it. So in the last video we saw the breaking up of the Ottoman Empire, and we saw Italy kicked out Somalia and the formation of the new East African Alliance. Now we're actually going to start this video, to start with this map, as over here in the Middle East, as tensions rise, we see an act of uniformity going on in this area. As before the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire, we saw Iran and Saudi Arabia in an alliance. And in today's video, we see the formation of the alliance called MATO, Middle East Treaty Organization. Yes, that is very cringe. Another country that joins this is actually Kuwait, as well as Qatar. Now, after this, we see Turkey that was pretty much screwed over in the last video, and they are pretty much surrounded by enemies. Yes, you got the buffer states of Iraq and Mesopotamia. They are at risk of constant invasion by the threat of the Soviet Union to the north, as well as their little state of Ankara and Anatolia right here. So they go ahead and join the Axis. So we come down here to Egypt, where you see this little piece of land right here. That is currently owned by Britain, as it was a gain from the World War II, from them invading into Egypt from down south in Sudan. And they pretty much have no use for this piece of territory. It's pretty much useless. Yes, it controls a bit of trade going in the Red Sea, but they have no use for it. And two countries want that land. Egypt claims it as their own, as they owned it through the Ottoman Empire, and Sudan claims it. And both demand that Britain cede it to them. There was a vote. It was 25% for Egypt, 25% for Sudan, and 50% for independence. And honestly, that is exactly what they get. Well, that lasted for 5 seconds. Yeah, immediately Egyptian troops stationed on the border enter into the north of the newly formed country as they moved out south. However, following this, we also have Sudan join this war. Well, not really. It's not really a war. It's more like an occupation, as this country doesn't even have a leader. It's pretty much a group of people living in cities that have recently got independence. So after a few days, but all of it is occupied. Now immediately tensions rise as Sudan demands Egypt gets out of their land. Egypt demands Sudan gets out of their land, but the soldiers over here have the biggest staring contest in the history of staring contests. We see a break in that as Sudanese troops in the east move in and capture major cities along the coastline. And Egypt claims that is an attack against them. I forgot to include that clip, didn't I? Alright, ignore this for now. Basically, before this whole invasion thing sorted out, we see Egypt apply for membership in NATO, as they own a little chunk of land over here in the Middle East, and they claim that they are eligible for membership. And immediately they are ratified as the Middle East wants full unity in the Middle East. They want no wars in this area, as they have gone under enough turbulence. So after Egypt, that's a bit of the background knowledge. And for that background reason, we see Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, and Qatar all declare war on Sudan. And immediately after this, we see questions rise up over here in East Africa, as you can see that much of them are in the alliance. However, because this isn't really an attack one, attack all alliance, this is an attack one, attack all alliance. Sudan can attack Egypt, but some of these countries just don't see it as that. They see that Egypt as the aggressor for entering Sudanese territory. So some countries join this war, including Ethiopia and Somaliland. However, all the others just don't join, and that's fine with Sudan because they think they can take them on themselves. Ethiopia says thanks for that, but okay. Immediately, we see Sudan push back Egypt as they completely capture the entirety of the territory, and they move into Egypt from the coastline. We also see them advance from the Nile, going up like this. I don't know if this is directly the Nile, I'm just making it up, but I know it like goes like this, maybe, but I just do not know. However, that is exactly what Sudan does, making swift progress, as Egypt is not a strong country in this scenario. However, Saudi Arabia is a strong country, as after some naval fighting down here, we see them make a landing in Djibouti and Eritrea, quickly expanding on this thread and setting up multiple bases for Iran and Kuwait to send their troops from the Persian Gulf in support of Egypt. However, that does not stop Sudan from pushing back Egypt further, as they continue to move along the coastline towards Cairo, and they continue their advance along the Egyptian Nile. The Egyptian special forces managed to cut off a large amount of troops up here and start moving in to trap the majority of their troops. With seeing this, Sudan kind of leads them as they push towards the coastline and manage to connect up, leading to this entire southern area falling. With this, Egypt captures around 30,000 troops and begins their plans to push back Sudan entirely. Back over in Djibouti, we see them completely capture this area and even move into Ethiopia. They move along the coastline of Eritrea and move in to cut off some troops over here. And they capture pretty much the whole country of Eritrea. With this, Iran arrives in the east, landing on the tip of Somaliland, and they expand upon this front line. However, Saudi Arabia says what is Iran doing, as they should not focus on Somaliland, should focus more on liberating Egypt. Iran says no, however, as they have already landed their troops and it would just be a waste of resources. So Saudi Arabia aids Iran in capturing Somaliland, as pretty much the entire coastline is captured, and this leads to the surrender of Somaliland. Now Ethiopia is now under threat, as large amounts of troops begin to invade Ethiopia. Back up here in Egypt, we see a continued Sudanese invasion as they continue to push towards the coastline, which they do so successfully and manage to cut Egypt in two. Following this, they focus on the west as they capture Cairo, effectively making Egypt surrender to them. We see the capture of this area, and from here the rest of the Egyptian coastline is captured, leading to the surrender of the country. With this, however, Saudi Arabia continues their invasion into along the coastline as they try to stick towards it, because they don't really want to go too far inland, because they're a whole sea away to supply their troops. And following this, we do see Sudan send troops down here. However, here's the thing. Saudi Arabia and Iran are much more powerful than all of these guys combined, as these are recently independent, apart from Ethiopia, and are relatively weak. Honestly, Ethiopia is probably the only one that could do anything, which they do actually. They push back Iran forces and even enter into Somalia. But that's pretty much it. So when Saudi Arabia begins to move forward and manages to pretty much cut off Ethiopia from Sudan, and they move into Ethiopia, Sudan offers them peace. And Saudi Arabia says no to this because they want to liberate Egypt, but Iran says, okay, we can talk peace as long as you don't completely annex Egypt and they can remain in our alliance. And Sudan agrees to this in exchange for the release of Somaliland and the release of, I'll just show it in the peace treaty. So in the peace treaty, we can see that Egypt has to give up all claims on the disputed territory down here, as well as lose some of their coastline to Sudan. We also see that Somaliland is actually released from Saudi Arabia's grasp. Eritrea is released from Somalia and forced to leave the alliance. Now, talking about Eritrea, it was agreed that it would become a neutral territory, that it will not join the NATO or the East African Alliance, and both sides agreed to it and agreed that all trade going through this region is not free but equal. Now, moving away from East Africa, we actually see a new development over here in Europe, as we can see that pretty much everyone's on the alliance, apart from Switzerland, Ireland, Iceland, and the Nordic countries, and I guess Greenland, and I guess these 3 microstates, but who cares about them? 4 big alliances in Europe, that being the Allies, the Axis, the Germanic Union, and the Soviet and the Moscow Pact. And people can tell that a big war is coming, and no one knows how it will begin, but many people are very scared because all these 3 countries hate each other, as well as Germany hating the Soviet Union hating Germany, and all that stuff. So each of the alliances aim to try to bring in the remaining countries of Europe under their grasp. So everyone goes up to the Nordic countries and tries to get them to join their alliance. First of all, we see Germany threaten Denmark with invasion, so they go ahead and join their alliance. Following this, we see Germany demand that Norway joins their alliance, as does the Soviet Union. So instead, Norway goes ahead and joins the Allies in order to gain their protection. Iceland joins the Allies, and Sweden wants to remain neutral. But of course, neutrality is never the option when it comes to these powers. However, obviously, the Soviet Union and Germany, of course, they're going to invade Sweden. But why Norway? Well, they kind of did this on their own. They want to prevent Germany from gaining further access to the Baltic Sea. So they go ahead and declare war on Sweden, despite opposition from the United Kingdom and France. We begin with Germany landing on the south of Sweden as they push in and take the coastlines. We see Norway pushing from their southern border, as this is pretty much the only area they've conveyed because mountain. The Soviet Union makes very little gains up here in the north, as while this is a very low populated area, it is a very icy place to visit. So while their progress is quite slow. While in this, special forces in Norway launch an invasion from the northwest in order to try to go towards the coastline to cut the Soviet Union off from mainland Sweden. Well, this is the mainland Sweden, but the main part of Sweden. And this goes relatively successfully until Soviet Union focuses on the coastline, which they take swiftly. Seeing this, Germany makes another landing over here in the east, try to capture Stockholm, which after a few months of fighting, they surround the city and on the verge of capturing it. By the way, this is probably one of the most best placed cities I've ever seen. Like, if any capitals are here, like, I would think it was there, Similar with Oslo being right here. Sweden, while getting invaded on all sides, they are not a country that will go down easily, as they can defend themselves. They're a powerful country. And so that is exactly what they do, because Norway is not a powerful country in this scenario right now. And they immediately push out Norway, and because this is mainly Denmark's troops, they begin to push them back down here in the south, which they do so with ease. And they even eye Denmark themselves. Following this, we have a small army move into Norway and move along and catch Oslo, forcing the forces up here to retreat out of their country in order to defend their homeland, despite it being literally the smallest amount of land probably ever being invaded. On this, Sweden focuses on Germany as they try to push them back. However, more and more troops begin to land and their capital is taken. With this, Germany makes another invasion from the south, and Denmark re-enters the war and meets up with the Germany's troops, and they quickly expand upon this front. Norway, who has been not very good in this war so far, continues to lose their coastline to a very small number of Swedish troops until this is put to a standstill, as Sweden pretty much falls apart over to Germany. With turmoil in the south, the Soviet Union continues their invasion of northern Sweden, as they make very, very swift progress into this area, as they capture the entire north of the country until they are stopped by Swedish troops. With the spreading of the troops, Norway begins to push back the Swedish forces in their country and even make it all the way to Oslo, recapturing their capital city. However, a small amount of Swedish troops hold out. However, following this, we see Germany continue to invade from the south, capturing all of southern Sweden and even surrounding the little troops over here, allowing Norway to push them out, completely capturing them all. Now, if Norway wants to gain anything from this war, they begin to invade from the mountains like they said they wouldn't do. However, they do this and they have some success in doing so. However, mountain conditions become too extreme and they hold their front. And with this, the rest of Sweden pretty much falls over to the two superpowers crashing into each other. Now, with Sweden divided up, time to look at a peace treaty. This is going to be a very weird peace treaty. So, as we can look at this peace treaty, we can see that Norway gains a lot, some mountains. That is literally it. And Sweden is divided up between North Sweden and South Sweden. If you guys know, like, want to name this area something else, maybe Lapland, maybe, I don't know. Or that's more Finland, I think. And rename this part Sweden. That's fine with me. Quite a bit, but Denmark doesn't gain anything for some reason. They wanted some land over here, but they don't get it. And looking at the alliance map, yeah, Northern Sweden is forced to join the Moscow Pact, and Sweden is forced to join the Germanic Union. It's not really Germanic Union anymore, so I'm just going to call it the Central Powers once more, as that just seems more fitting. So yeah, they're now the Central Powers. And one more development happens in this video, as less and less white can be seen across the map, and that is not going to change, as neutrality, apart from over here in Asia, is starting to look not feasible. So following the wars in Europe, America uses this as propaganda to force a load of countries into their alliance, including Brazil, Peru and Ecuador, Argentina and Paraguay, also Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and Costa Rica and Panama. So America looks a lot more united, and Mexico is very scared of the US. And this even convinces them to join in on the Germanic Union with the Central Powers. And now the world is looking very divided right now. Yeah, it looks very divided. So following this, we actually see some unifications. First unification is over here, where the Gambia goes ahead and joins in on the West African Union. Or, no, I called this the Ivory Coast, didn't I? Yeah, I called this the Ivory Coast, which is a very turmoilic country and might fall apart soon, but for now, they go ahead and join it. Also, we see Syria and Mesopotamia join in to one country as well, just to make the borders look a bit cleaner. And who knows, Iraq might join this as well. And for that'll actually do for this episode of the alternative future of the world. Why is that happening? I do not know why that's happening. But if you've enjoyed, subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. And that's it. Goodbye.